We're not the most tech advanced sector of all the industries. And what's interesting, they never think that this is something that the attendees need. They're sitting on a lot of data, but to be able to understand and monetize this data, that's not as priority as selling booth spaces on the show floor. Give me your hit list and just sit back. I'll send those people your way. You should demand for it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Epic Events from the EP.IC Podcast. So this podcast is all about conferences and exhibitions around Asia. Our aim is really to feature events for the growth of business owners, investors, and industry leaders, so you make a well-informed decision to attend. Which ones are good, which ones are not good. Plus, also some added bonuses about what technologies are available and how best to use it. Now, before we introduce our guest for this episode, please help to give us a follow because that simple gesture helps us to get a wider audience to help more professionals around the region just like you. And now, onto the podcast. And welcome back to the podcast. Now, in our line of events, be it for trade or consumer, we employ apps and all sorts of tech. But do we fully utilize it? So I've invited Errol Lim, the COO and co-founder of Jublia AI. Errol is here to weigh in on the following topics. What event organizers look in value creation between attendees and sponsors and exhibitors, how tech can bridge that gap, and of course, additional business intelligence we should leverage on when we're using event tech platforms. Errol, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it has. Hey, give us a quick introduction of what Jublia AI does for the events industry.
Yeah, sure. Well, Jublia AI is a private LinkedIn on steroids for an event. It turbocharges and supercharges the connections and the experience of the event attendees during the weeks around the event. We actually specialize in engagement, and the way that we deliver and we measure engagement is through connecting people, products, content, and companies.
That's really awesome. Jublia has come a long way since its first customers. I remember using it for the very first time as well when we were still doing events. Now, I want to ask you something. What were the gaps you saw when you first started? And how do you think these problems or gaps have shifted over time? I want to see how your journey has really evolved.
Good question. We actually started the business in 2012. Back then, my co-founders and I, we were from the National University of Singapore. We were very fortunate to secure a scholarship that brought us to Stockholm. It was during the time where it was like a startup world. It was where Skype was acquired by Microsoft. There were fintechs were coming out. So we were attending a lot of events in Europe, and we saw a huge gap in the attendee experience. And that is, a lot of the networking was left to chance. And if you aren't exactly an outgoing person or an extrovert, you would be relegated to speak to the person who is queuing up in front of you or behind you at the coffee stand, or the person sitting beside you at the conference. And so the whole notion of us building Jublia was the fact that we wanted to engineer serendipity. We wanted to make this whole ability to meet the right people at events and engineered magic. And that was, 14 years ago? So we came back to Singapore, we registered our company in 2013, and it's been so many years till now doing what we do. And obviously, the DNA of the company was with matchmaking on the premise of engineering serendipity. But as we went forward, we realized that matchmaking was not just between people to people, but it's also between people to companies, people to products, people to content. And just at the start of this year, we rebranded ourselves as Jublia AI.
I remember back then when we first started it out, yeah, Jublia was about matchmaking, like what you said, it was about connection, it was about making those handshakes happen. I can see how that has shifted over the years, whereby now with AI coming into picture, it's no longer a search engine per se, where you're manually searching and filtering through, but now it's about, hey, I have this problem, I need this solution. And the AI engine will then be able to give you those recommendations. Is that how it works now?
Some of you might roll your eyes, like every other company right now is an AI company, which is probably true. But I dare say that we are possibly one of the first AI native event tech companies in the world. And there is a big difference between being AI native and having AI powered features. So we've always had AI powered features, but being AI native is integrating AI into our tech stack. And the output of that is we literally built a prom bar and we made that prom bar front and center of the user experience. So the goal is still engagement. This prom bar plays an integral role in what I see as a shift of how attendees are engaging at events. They're no longer browsing through an endless list of attendees, browsing through an endless list of content, but they're asking. And so right now, it's the birth of this hyper-personalized experience for every single attendee. What we're seeing is a huge uptake in people actually interacting. This might not bode well with a lot of event organizers. We're not the most tech advanced sector of all the industries. And what's interesting, they never think that this is something that the attendees need till they see the data. So a recent event in Singapore that we work with, they're one of the biggest food events in Asia. In the past, when we were providing just the ability for people to search based off filters, we're receiving like thousands of search requests or search intent. And now with this shift into this AI model with a prompt bar, we're seeing tens of thousands of questions. We're talking about a mid double digit increase in engagement. And it's not restricted to just filters within the parameters, because when you can type a question, then it's a free-forming field. And this data is something that we are able to provide to event organizers so they can actually see what their attendee customers are actually asking. What do they actually want to experience at their event? And I think that that's a holy grail to take in an event to the next level.
You're absolutely right. I mean, coming from that industry, I totally see how important it is for that data. And in fact, that's a really good segue to the next question, which is when event organizers are planning, on the other hand, right? Do you think that they are really missing out on this data, or is it because they're not well informed enough to use this data?
I think that they're not missing out on the data because I think for event organizers, they are extremely data rich, right? Just on the premise of registration, which is the most surface level of collecting data, and they are at the forefront of trends and reports. It's not a lack of data that they have. But I think the inherent problem is that organizing an event is actually a lot of grunt work. I think it's more of a priority, right? Where they're sitting on a lot of data, but to be able to understand and monetize this data, that's not as priority as this other thing, which is selling booth spaces on the show floor, right? Another thing as well is the whole start-stop cycle in the events industry. It's like, burning the midnight oil for weeks or months, doing that event for 3 days or even 4 days, and then, silence for like 2-3 months, and then rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Really to solve this is probably to set up another division of these event companies, really take an interest in the data as the intelligence for them to remain competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the time we're focusing on real estate. We're thinking about the booth space, sponsorship, so on. That's where the money is. But the real value creation has always been about networking, being able to promote product, promote services, get more visibility for the businesses to get out there, right? And speaking opportunity. These were always the top tier things in sponsorship. But I'm looking at it from the tech angle. Where do you think you fit in? And you can go, look, event organizer ABC, if you use this platform, you can monetize it by doing this. What is that secret sauce to leveraging off technologies and making a profit?
Well, if I knew the secret sauce, I think I'll be a multi-millionaire, right? But I don't know. I hope to come close to finding out this holy grail, right? That's what makes this industry interesting, and then what makes the work that I have with my event organizer clients and partners that more interesting as well. But I think there are really two parts to this, right? So the first part is the value creation using a technology is being able to prove ROI, as simple as that, right? In the past, it's all about how can we bring more people into our events. And right now, that's not it. Now it's not about quantity, it's about quality, right? How can I prove ROI to these people who came to my events so that they're going to continue to come back to my events? And the second point, which is quite interesting right now, is there are two types of data that we observe at events. And the first type of data is explicit data, data that is given for free. Mail loves Guns N' Roses, Singapore, right? Demographic data. But also a deeper level is intentional data, or the data of intent. He's really, really interested in the North American market. You know, even though he's from Singapore, and you would think that, oh, Singaporean time zone in North America is too far away. Maybe this person wants to do work around the region. But no, when he comes to the show, he's, beeline to all the North American booths, going to the Americas Pavilion, and he's looking for these types of products. And that's what we call intent. And the understanding of the intent serves the organizer with type of intel to make sure that you're bringing the right people to the show, you're bringing the right products to the show, and the right buys to the show. And then when you understand that, you've got the recipe or so for a good show, then the ROI piece is that when these sellers come and they participate, or when these buyers come and they participate, how best can you then provide them with a report that allows them to see that they've been to your show, and in the past 2 days, they have done maybe 4 months worth of business, with X number of qualified leads that they otherwise might spend lots of money outside and lots of business trips outside the context of your event.
I see. This is really interesting because it's starting to really click. If I had known earlier, let's just say, for example, if I were to talk to my sponsors, say, hey, how would you best use something like this? And imagine if I had an AI program, be it an app or a platform, I'd be telling them, look, program an agent to do your pre-sales, to find out who is there, dig up 6 months worth of LinkedIn posts or 2 years worth of LinkedIn posts, trawl through everything, right? And eventually it helps to narrow down who's interested. And if these people turn up, they're your prospective customers. And that's an amazing thing that what AI can do now.
Well, that is true, but I would caution on that because, if you have just thought about it so simply, I'm sure everybody has thought about it as well, and we do it as well. And that's a good thought, right? And I think one of the, I guess, bad things that AI has done, at least to the software industry, which I belong to, it's a really an existential problem because software right now is commoditized. You could vibe code applications like that, right? You could build a website like that, and it just reduces the barrier. But you see, one of the things that you did mention is you could find the best AI program. You should do all these algorithms to crawl the web and get all this prospectus. but you have to do it on your own. So a lot of the software companies, what they do is they license a software to the event organizer or to a client, and the outcome is then governed by the client. The outcome is not guaranteed, basically. And that's the difference between, a business like that and Jublia. So Jublia is a software company. And on one hand, the model that we have allows an event organizer to use our software, to purchase a license of our software, and they govern the workflow, and they guarantee their outcomes on their own, right? We just provide them with the software. But we also have another model which has been growing in popularity, where we actually govern the outcome for our customers. So
Wow.
the reverse pitch more is, imagine if you tell your sponsors, give me your hit list and just sit back. I'll send those people your way. So it's not like you need to find an AI program to do this. It's we'll handle it. You don't need to worry about how we're going to do it. We could use one AI program. We could use 5 AI programs. We could use a fleet of telemarketers. But all you need to care about is the outcome. And we just completed a project in Abu Dhabi. This was in early May. It was a fantastic project. In spite of the Gulf War that's happening, I thought that the agencies and the organizers of the event were very courageous and were also very innovative in putting together the event. It's called Make It in the Emirates, where we were managing quite an extensive investor meeting program. And we're talking about outcomes of thousands of meetings within 3 days of the show, right? So actual deal flows that were made.
Now, I always had a dream where, these platforms would be able to now almost integrate seamlessly with what things like Salesforce and some of these pre-sales or sales platforms could do for you, which is continuously generating leads for you, continuously feeding leads to you when it's right time, creating sales cycles and all that. I'm just wondering, with AI now, does Jublia AI actually help with that continuous engagement now throughout the entire sales cycle for the year? Because like what we mentioned, it's a start-stop. You work tirelessly for 3 months, in 3 days. After that, it's over. It's radio silence till the next edition.
Yeah, well, I guess the short answer is yes. But that being said, we do not have a sales CRM that we offer customers. A lot of customers use Salesforce, they use HubSpot, they use other companies. Sometimes they even have their own internal system. But I think living in a tech world, you wouldn't be unfamiliar with the term APIs, right? And all it is a bridge that sends packets of information across, and that's what we do with some of the customers that we work with. And back to the point about proving ROI as well as data on the user's intent, right? That is the type of data that we also send to the business intelligence tool or the sales CRM. There is a lot of context to the conversation, right? And when there's a lot of context to the conversation, it just becomes a lot more relational and trust is being built, right? Imagine if you go to your favorite restaurant that you have went like maybe a handful of times. And then when you sit down, the head waiter goes, "Hey, good to see you again, sir. And I remember you're allergic to shellfish. So, this is the menu, but this has shellfish, but there's an alternative." And it's just a hell lot more personalized, right?
Yeah, I mean, a very interesting thing that you brought up, because I watched the video the other day, which is they're talking about some of the hotels which still employed doorman. And those that actually got rid of their doorman, because, they had automatic rotating doors and all that. Ultimately, what happened was that room sales actually started to dip gradually as time went on for those hotels without doorman. Because the doorman actually brings a lot more value than what it looks like on the surface. Because they don't just open the doors. They know who are the regular customers. They recognize the people who keep coming in. They ask you about your day. They improve your experience.
So I think part of being in the events industry as well is that we're in a really, really weird place because we are adopting technology and we're at the forefront of a lot of the conversations that a lot of these industries have, but also this whole concept of face-to-face. I mean, remember when COVID happened and everyone had to go online, it's just so different, right? It was so different. It's like when we could go back to events, it was for a moment, there was just this hurrah moment, right? When it was so clear that this face to face magic, right? It just rang so strong. It's like nothing could replace it. And I think going back again to this whole engineering of serendipity, and the word serendipity just sounds marvelous, right? Serendipitous, right? It's like this engineered coincidence, this engineered magic, and the fact of the matter is that power and that ability can be in the organizer's hands. And I think that as we go through more and more of an event life cycle, we're seeing a lot more new types of event formats, and we're seeing how the engineering of this serendipity with the help of AI can become
Mm-hmm.
even better, even more accurate, even more spot on, right? And it still does not replace that human face-to-face encounter.
All right, cool, man. I love that story. The point of this podcast is really to make sure that we have very actionable points for both industry leaders or MICE professionals, as well as the customers of these MICE professionals, meaning to say exhibitors and sponsors. So I love to get your take on how to best increase the chances of success for our MICE professionals as well as their customers using AI. What tips would you happen to have for them? You could specifically say Jublia if you wanted to. It's a good
Yeah,
opportunity.
yeah, obviously. I think the first thing is if you're an attendee and you're attending an event and you're paying good money to attend, does not have basic digital infrastructure. When I talk about basic digital infrastructure, it's like they don't have a mobile app, they don't have a web app, they don't have a form of an AI system. You should demand for it. What we're talking about, we're living in a stone age. What's going on, right? I mean, okay, let me put this in an easier way for you, right? Imagine you work in a company where they do not give you the internet. That's the same context, right? How the heck would you be able to work productive if you're working, you get employed in this business? And like, all right, first day of work, you go inside, you open your computer, it's like, hey, what's the Wi-Fi? It's like, sorry, sir, we don't use the internet here. Like, would that be acceptable to you? And if it's not acceptable to you, it just sounds crazy, right? Then why would it be acceptable to you to spend money to attend an event and that event does not have an app or a web platform or the ability to matchmake or even an AI assistant? In my opinion, it's basic, all right? It's basic because you're attending an event, you're spending money, and these tools help you find the business that you want to find. These tools are going to be huge leverage, right, to making your experience work and helping you prove ROI to yourself. So I guess that's my biggest point to the attendees. And for MICE professionals, there are a lot of good software companies out there, Jublia included, but there are a lot of good event tech companies out there as well. And there is this trend going around where event organizers are like vibe coding their own applications and they're going like, oh, we can do everything. Yeah, if you want to try doing it, try, but it kind of muddies the experience a lot. And I do see some negative experiences for some events when organizers start to use something that's not very proven and tested. I think a lot of the tech companies who have spent years building their software have not only the credibility behind it, but they have a proper workflow on how they have done it. I would love to suggest that you take a more collaborative mindset rather than eating the entire pie. Is why don't you work with these companies and instead of eating a small pie, work with this company so that both of you can eat a bigger pie. So be discerning when you adopt the right technology for your event.
Great tips. I love it. And once again, Errol, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Now, before we end, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you, find out more about Jublia AI, and of course, tell us what's going on over on your side.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great. Thank you for having me. So you could personally email me at Errol, ERROL @jublia.com. You could look me up on LinkedIn, ERROL, last name LIM. Or you could check us out at our website, ublia.com. things are busy for us in a good way. We're working on a number of exciting projects that span Australia all the way to Africa. And we're a software company, as I mentioned, that really focuses on the outcomes of our customers. And because of that, we don't neglect the face to face. So a lot of our people are flying overseas. I'll be flying to Houston to make sure that the engineered Serendipity is properly engineered, and be the face-to-face representative there to make sure that I have a smile on my face when I put two and two together for a meeting. I'd love to have a chat with you guys if you guys are even organizers struggling to connect and spur engagement at your event. Thank you so much, Edric, for this opportunity to speak on your podcast.
All right, thanks, man. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've all heard from Errol Lim of Jublia AI. Of course, head over to the website. You've got the email as well. If you missed it, check it out in the description. And of course, please comment, like, and subscribe to the podcast. And that's that for this episode of Epic Events by EP.IC Podcast. See you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.